So there's been a lot of chatter around Matt Reeves' The Batman being part of the DCU recently. Originally, Matt Reeves' Batman universe was going to be separate from the DCU and be under the Elseworlds label for DC, but now it looks like it isn't 100% certain what they are doing with Matt Reeves' Batman universe just yet. James Gunn seems like he wants the Batman to be part of his DCU, but Reeves was the one who insisted on them being separate. But I guess now Reeves has come around to the idea of having his universe be part of the DCU because it looks like there are some serious talks about this being a possibility. Now, the Batman being part of the DCU certainly has divided people on if it's a good idea or not, but what if I told you there's a way of integrating Matt Reeves' Batman universe into the DCU and integrating it in a way that could benefit both the Batman and the DCU? Think about where we left off in The Batman. Bruce is still young, inexperienced, and trying to figure out what it really means to be Gotham's protector. In the beginning of The Batman, Batman starts off as a vengeance-obsessed vigilante, but by the end of the movie, Batman realizes he has to be more. In the ending of The Batman, Bruce realizes Batman should also inspire Gotham and not just spread fear into everyone and everything. Almost every Batman adaptation just focuses on Batman being dark and mysterious, who's also great at kicking ass, but those adaptations also forget that he's more than that. Batman is a hero that needs to inspire, and I feel The Batman is the Batman movie that gets that concept the most. Not saying the other Batman adaptations don't do that because The Dark Knight gets that concept to a certain degree, but I feel it doesn't get the concept as much as the Batman does. Batman also really focuses on the detective side to the character more than any other adaptation we have gotten previously, which makes Matt Reeves' Batman feel like adaptation most like the comics already. Because it sucks that that aspect to the character gets glossed over a lot. Matt Reeves' Batman has a lot of potential to eventually turn into the perfect Batman later on down the line. So what if Matt Reeves' Batman trilogy just leads to Pattinson's young, inexperienced Batman becoming the version of the character that we all know and love with the Batcave, Bat family, learning to disguise himself as the billionaire, playboy, philanthropist? Because right now, for some reason, Matt Reeves decided to make Bruce just really weird and emo. Hopefully, he eventually turns into that playboy billionaire personality that is kind of like the disguise. The Batman that we get in The Brave and the Bold can be the older Batman that we see from the Reeves trilogy. By the time we reach The Brave and the Bold, we meet an older Bruce Wayne who could be in, say, like in his early 40s, because right now the Batman that we see in the Matt Reeves movies is around like late 20s, early 30s. He could even be younger. Right now, the Batman is essentially Batman year one, so we're not even close to getting the Bat family and all of those other things and characters that he gets later on later in his life. If they were to connect the Batman to the DCU, hopefully the Batman that we see in The Brave and the Bold could be played by Robert Pattinson, just with makeup to look like he aged 10 to 15 years from the Batman movies. But if Pattinson doesn't want to be part of more movies after his trilogy and sign on to be a big part of this new DC universe, it could lead to a pathway for the DCU. It then gives the DCU a chance to recast, and the recast can be used as an in-story explanation that's just an older Batman as to why he looks different from the Reeves movies. Essentially what the Star Wars prequels did for the Star Wars original trilogy. You know, you got young Obi-Wan, young Anakin. Obviously, those aren't the same actors from the original trilogy. You just recast them younger. You know, so you got a young version of Batman, which is played by Robert Pattinson, and you got the present day older version of Batman, who could be played by anyone in like their early 40s. So essentially, anything that Matt Reeves decides to do with his version of Batman, anything that he wants to connect to his version of Batman, say the Penguin or any other kind of shows he wants to develop, they can all be set in the past before the current day events, and anything that Matt Reeves does can just be prequels. And yes, I know it's not as simple as that, because there's also a few other problems with the Batman connecting to the DCU, which is the fact that the Batman and all the movies and TV shows connected to it are supposed to be super realistic and gritty, dark takes on Batman. And I know some of you are probably thinking, oh, the Batman can't fit into a universe where Superman exists and Green Lantern exists and aliens, magic, and all this other stuff. And I get all that. As it currently stands, the Batman is supposed to be realistic. It's supposed to be a gritty, dark take on Batman, and you know, he has the detective stuff going on. There's no supernatural things going on in the Batman universe. And what I have to say to that is just what the case is right now. Where does it say in this universe that supernatural things and crazy stuff in the Batman universe can't happen later? I know Matt Reeves previously said he doesn't want to have anything crazy going on in the Batman universe, like he doesn't want to have people with powers in his movies, people like Mr. Freeze, I guess, or Clayface. But a few things to that. First off, he could change his mind. Just because he says that now doesn't mean they can't exist in his universe later, especially with him reconsidering the idea of his Batman being part of the DCU. And we've seen takes on superheroes where they're supposed to be really realistic and there's like no power things going on. And then as it goes on, they add supernatural things to the story that they're telling. I have a few examples to mind. First off, Arrow. Arrow started off as Dark Knight inspired take on Oliver Queen. He acted like Batman in some ways, but instead of not having a no-kill rule, he killed everybody. He was kind of like the Punisher, in my opinion. But yeah, Arrow started off as something that was supposed to be grounded. It was supposed to be a realistic take on a vigilante, similar to what was going on with the Batman right now. And what ended up happening was we got Barry Allen introduced, and he opened the gateway for superpowered individuals being able to exist in the universe of Arrow. Things changed. And do we really need another Batman where everything is super realistic and grounded and where there's absolutely no superpowered beings that can go up against Batman? Batman has a rogues gallery full of villains with powers and magical abilities. But I respect Matt Reeves' creative vision on what he wants to do with the Batman. He wants to keep everything grounded and realistic and no superpowered individuals. That's according to him. That could change later on. But either way, everything that Matt Reeves does can just be set in the past. And if he wants to do every story with Batman realistic and grounded, he can do that. It could just be introduced later on. Maybe Batman's early years just had no supervillains with powers or anything crazy. Then later on in the DCU, Superman gets introduced, Green Lantern gets introduced, and all these other heroes get introduced. And with that comes with aliens and magical beings. We could do the Arrowverse approach with the Batman where everything that happens in Gotham City stays grounded and realistic, at least while Matt Reeves is doing the early years of Batman. Like with most of Arrow, every season was pretty grounded and it had villains that didn't have any powers. I know a few seasons kind of went off the rails and they went with multiverse stuff going on. And in season 4, we had Damien Dark, a guy with magical powers. But the Batman doesn't have to do all that. Most of Arrow, like Arrow season 1, 2, kind of 3, 5, parts of 6, parts of 7, they were all like realistic, grounded like it was in Arrow season 1. And Arrow season 1 really was heavily inspired by The Dark Knight by taking the approach of having the vigilante be grounded and realistic. Also, another example of what was supposed to be a grounded, realistic take on a superhero story into introducing characters and villains with abilities is Gotham. The Batman could take Gotham's approach and, it's supposed to start off grounded and realistic. And then as the show goes on, you start introducing those fantastical villains. I really hope Matt Reeves does change his mind about adding superpowered individuals as villains, because I kind of want to see what Matt Reeves can do with a Mr. Freeze story. Batman's world always has been kind of its own thing, separate from gods and aliens for the most part. So when we finally see the Batman alongside other DC heroes, it could be through his perspective as a street-level detective thrown into a larger-than-life world. And that contrast can make for an interesting story, in my opinion. If James Gunn and Matt Reeves play this right, it could be one of the smartest long-term storytelling moves in comic book movie history. Instead of rebooting Batman for the millionth time and having two different Batmans existing at the same time, they could build off what is already working. Let Reeves tell his complete story with his detective-esque movies that show how the character became the hero he is destined to be. And by the third and final movie in Matt Reeves' trilogy, he is truly what Batman is in terms of what the character is supposed to represent, what he means to Gotham City. And there will probably be a gap between Matt Reeves' final Batman movie and To the Brave the Bold. I would say there should be a 10 to 15 year gap. And then we get present day DCU Batman, who's like in his early 40s. There's a Nightwing, a Red Hood probably already existing, Damian Wayne, Batgirl, and the list goes on. Actually, I hope there isn't a Red Hood, because I do want to see Under the Red Hood story at some point. We need that in live action. And we could also see present-day Batman forming the Justice League, and who else knows what's going to happen in James Gunn's DCU. Reeves gets full creative control for his trilogy, and Gunn gets a well-developed, fully fleshed-out Batman for his universe, an accurate Batman to what he is in the comics.